Hello, and welcome to the Big Money Stylist Podcast. We are so excited, and if you are watching this live, I have wet hair.
Please go to bigmoneystylistnow.com and go look at Danielle.
I know I look super, I was going to say prissy. I look super polished on my Instagram, but for the podcast, I show up with wet hair, a ball cap, half of my lashes missing, and
oh my God.
legit, I look rough. Like, we just got off of a 5-day amazing event.
If you look at my hair, it's freshly washed and curled.
You know what? I did wash it, and then I was like, the show must go on. So I came here, and I'm ready to go with a wet ponytail. So whatever, it is what it is.
Dude, let's talk about last week.
Whoa.
Man,
It was like Christmas.
I call it my Christmas week because it is our Christmas. Last week we actually had our last Mastermind Q4 event, and we actually had our biggest event of the year, which is BMS Con 4.
Oof. It was amazing. It went even better than I anticipated. Can I just pat you on the back and pat
Thank
us?
you. I'm going to pat you on the
Thanks.
back.
Let's pat
Look
each
at
other on
us.
the back. Good
Man,
job.
let me tell you though, we had such even though we're patting ourselves on the back, we also have to give like a mad shout out to Katie, who is the director of events.
We just threw her in that role.
She runs fucking everything, and she showed
up.
And you know what's so fascinating? I think it's so funny because when we first really talked to her about that role, we were like, look, we only have like a month or two until this event. It's the biggest one of the year. We have literally no training for this role. We have some support from the Warrior team. Katie, figure it out. Like, honestly, that's really what we did to her. Do you realize that?
Well, you know what's so funny is I was realizing, like, in our industry, the reason that maybe events don't go well is because you really have to invest. Like, you have to invest in your people, you have to invest in equipment, you have to invest in the venue, you have to invest in the experience. And time and time over again, it always, when I've gone to hair stuff, it just feels so thrown together last minute. And we have been planning this since January.
Yeah, it's been planned for the whole year because we're obviously like in contract with this place. Like, you can't just book some things. We had almost 300 artists. Like, you can't just book that last minute.
Right.
But Katie going into the role, we actually had to let go of our previous event coordinator for, other reasons. Guys, if someone on your staff doesn't work, they don't work. Don't hold on to them just because, which is a really hard decision that we had to make.
We were kind of like, well, shit, we can't let this person go like this close to the event. And I was like, hey, I trust whatever you guys, like, it was kind of like a group decision because I didn't know this particular person very well. And I was like, I trust whatever you guys, your gut's telling you. And
we were pretty much like, look, we already know that this is not the correct person for the position. She's a really nice woman, don't get us wrong, but we knew she wasn't correct for the role. So why keep someone in a role coming up to the biggest event of the year? And let me tell you, I'm really glad that we actually made that decision, even though it was really hard, which I know that if you're a business owner listening, sometimes you're like, but there's a big meeting, there's a product launch, there's this or that. I can't.
Like you need them.
And something that you've always said is don't be held hostage by your employees.
Well, I feel like in any relationship you're in, like, if you should never, whether it's business or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, if you're in a place where you feel like you need one another, that's not like a healthy balance. You should both be there because you choose to be there. And I think that so many times in business, we hold on to, like you said, like employees, because there's never a good time to let them go or there's never a good time to move on. But at the sacrifice of what? And like moving back to even having Katie step in, she really showed up. Like, the fact that I think it was actually perfect timing. Even though it seemed like bad timing, it was actually perfect timing because it allows people on your team to be like, cool, you want a shot? You want more opportunities? Show me what you got. And then when they like go above and beyond the mark, you're like, shit, this.
I mean, and that's literally what she did. Like, and I know we're talking obviously about our team, but really think about your team. And she really went well up. Like, what I expected of her, she exceeded those expectations. Like, we have honestly never had an event so run so stupidly smooth. Even having used like other teams that run events and like Warrior staff, like, no offense to all the guys, but damn, Katie, like...
Well, even the speakers we had and, like, just the people on our team that flew in to educate, they were like, Katie's amazing. Like, she coordinated everything. So, shout out to Katie. Number one.
You fucking killed
You
it.
fucking did
You
it.
motherfucking killed it. And so even if you're listening to this, that I know sometimes some things, because I'm telling you guys, to run an event this large, and even like we had at an event space, we had to coordinate everything from hotels to shuttle to food for 3 days for 300 people to breaks for staff to merchandise inside of clothing, merchandise inside of Isla, hair that had to be sold. Like when we say, like even turning the room around to change from a business setting to like a hair setting, every single thing from like the times people were mic'd, like there's so much that goes into this, and it can really seem overwhelming regardless of the industry you're in, whether you're planning an event or you're opening a business or you're starting to do like a class on something. It is very overwhelming.
So many details.
So many details. And if you're not a details person, like no offense, Danielle, you're not a details person.
I'm not a details person. No.
I say that with a lot of respect.
I'm a visionary. I'm the rudder of the ship.
That's what we say though. Like you're the visionary, and like Katie and I are implementers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's really how it works so well. So if you're not the details person, which I think is so funny.
But you know what's so funny? Like I've had to learn to let go because I know that's not my strength. I literally was like having multiple panic attacks leading up to it. And I was like, did you get this? Did you get this? You were at the point you were like, Danielle, you Voxered me. That we use this tool called Voxer. It's like walkie-talkie app that saves your conversation and notes and all that. And you literally were like, Danielle, you've lost your marbles. You've asked me this like 4 times this week. I'm like, I've lost my marbles.
And it's to the point where I'm like, Danielle, we got it. I need you.
I know. Everyone had
chill.
to. I drank a lot last week.
Not that much. No. Hold on.
No, I didn't. Not last week. Maybe the week before.
They're like, I thought Danielle was extra friendly at the event. She's just drunk. No, Danielle did not drink during the event.
I think I just had to let go. Like I had to just be like, hey, like you and Katie multiple times were like, we got this. And I think that I had to kind of just trust my teams and be like, okay. And all of us kind of came together and it was like so smooth.
Well, and it's so funny because I'm the pot calling the kettle black right now, because although I had to have the talk with you of like, Danielle, we got it. It's chill. We got it. And you'd be like, but, and I'm like, here's the fucking list. Like, that's why I printed off all those lists. And when you saw them, you're like, oh my God, they really have it.
But I think there's a balance for me because I would say the previous year, this year, my husband used to own my education company and no longer, I kind of like stepped into that role of CEO. And we transitioned probably in like February of this last year. And I felt like the year before that, I kind of just like gave him all
You
control.
were out too far.
I was out too far.
You have like a very happy medium. You can't be so far out like that ever again. But you
I
also
can't be too far in.
If you're in it, you panic because details.
I know, totally. And so I have to find like my happy space where I like to do meetings with my team and know exactly like, can you just give me a rundown? I don't need to know every single detail, but I do need to know exactly where we're at because I'm the visionary and I can't.
Which way is the ship going?
Yeah, I can't.
Where's the ship
I can't
headed?
steer the ship if I don't know what's going on. And I think oftentimes in business, like there's a lot of salon. Let's even go back to numbers. Like a lot of salon owners are like, I'm just going to do the art and the hair, and I'm just not going to worry about the numbers. If you don't know some of the numbers, like a lot of the numbers, you will fuck yourself sideways.
Mm-hmm. Well, and not only that, it was so funny because even down to things like debating lunch, because I was like, Danielle, we need a 2-hour lunch. You're like, fuck a 2-hour lunch. We're doing a 1 hour. And I was basically like, Danielle, as a trainer, like we need space because during that hour lunch, we still have to do all these things. I need to meditate. I need to eat. And you looked at me. At one point, Danielle looked at me and she's like, that's not your place. Like, that's not your role. You do not need to do the 15 things that you listed off. That's under Katie's like supervision now. And I was like, I hear you. And she's like, do you trust Katie? And I took a moment and I was like, yes. And you were basically like, well, then it's not on your plate anymore. Mm-hmm. Take it off. Your point is to meditate, eat, recharge for that hour.
Well, it's too hard to be the trainer and then worry about the back end details. Like if we're on stage, I think I dropped like 5 pounds this week. I kid you not. Like,
do you know how? I legit lost weight.
No, I know I did.
Yes.
I was like, oh, I feel very skinny.
Do you know what my boyfriend said to me? He goes, I had said something about eating, and I was like, oh, I'm finally getting back to like normal routine. He's like, because I made a joke. I was like, I'm extra skinny this week. He's like, I can actually tell you lost weight. And I'm like, wait, why? Did I look fat before? He's like, no. He was trying to give me a compliment. He's like, well, I can just tell like your cheekbones and your jaw are more defined. Yeah. I go, are they not normally like this? He's like, no, normally you're like puffier. I'm like, I'm puffy. I'm like, what do you mean puffy? God. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, no. And his brother goes, Ani, you look beautiful. I'm like, that's where you should have started.
Yeah, but it's true. It's like, I think that when you're on stage, that takes so much energy and that should be your focus. And so you can't get off stage and then be like, but did we get the handouts? Did we get this? And that's why the same person who is the event director is not on stage. Like, they're two equally important roles. And you were trying to kind of do both last year.
I was every role.
You were every role. And then I've even had to have like, I mean, you were like my main educator, my CEO, my CFO, my whatever, like so many
title,
roles.
I was
like,
in it.
So many roles. And finally, like as much as like I was kind of like letting go, I had to be like, Ani, like we and you fought me on this for a minute. I was like, we need more help, we need more staff, and you're like, I got this. And
I was like, because here's where I sat, and I say this because I know so many other like business owners can like understand that there was so much on my plate that like, yes, I wanted help.
It's like finding the time to train somebody to take what's off your plate.
I'd experienced shitty help, and shitty help is worse than no fucking help.
Because then you're babysitting.
And then I'm like, I don't have time to fucking babysit. That's why Katie legit just got thrown into it. And there were times where she came to me, she's like, hey, I'm gonna need to ask questions. I'm like, you ask your questions and I got you, but I can't fucking babysit.
I think that's a good determination. If you have somebody on your team where you feel like, even if it's down to like an assistant where you're like, you've given it time and you're still like, why am I course correcting so much? Why am I babysitting? I want you to consider that person, it's time for them to move on, because when you have somebody who fits the role the way they should fit the role, you're like, whoa, this is how it should be. And so I think a lot of times in life, even like, and I'm just going to bring up the assistant thing, because I've had some assistants that were not great and I held on to them because I'm like, well, I need help. But it actually cost me more time correcting their mistakes and like just trying to manage them. Like people that should have a little bit of like, they should just be able to go on their own and not like, you can give them guidance and direction, but you shouldn't have to babysit.
Well, and even because questions, I don't want it to seem like questions are a bad thing, because I actually think questions are a really, really great thing. And that's something that Katie and I, our communication was so clear, where she's like, I will have to ask you questions. I'm like, ask. But I've never once felt that she was asking me the same thing over and over and over and over. Have there been course corrections? Yes. Did we go toe to fucking toe at the event a couple times? Oh, you're damn right we did. Like, we went back and forth. Like, there's maybe like twice where we were like, neither was caving, and we were not yelling at each other, but we were getting close.
But I think that's healthy to be in that space where you're like, no, this is how it needs to be. No, this is how it needs to be. And then at some point you're like, okay, this is your role. You figure it out, you know? And
I did have that moment where I literally at one point told her, I go, this isn't going to work. And she goes, don't tell me it's not going to work. Give me a solution. I go, that's not my job. And then I walked away. And it was so funny because at the end of the event, she came up to me. She's like, you want to know something, Ani? I was like, give it to me, girl. She's like, we went toe to toe today. I was like, yes, we did. She goes, but you want to know something? I go, what? She's like, I still love you and respect you and I'm grateful for you. And I was like, and I'm grateful for you. Like, it didn't change our relationship at all. It didn't make it even worse, because you also, I feel like when you and I are power players. Like, we're power players. We're powerful women. Like, we'll fuck some shit up. Especially like in front, like behind the chair, on stage, in training, like, we got it. But I feel like Katie is the kind where she's so powerful in her role and she's so confident. She'll also be like, well, I'll fuck you up when it comes to this. Yeah. And so we went back and forth on this, like whatever it was. The thing was literally like moving chairs, because I was like, there's not room. She's like, yes, there is. And now finally, we literally figured out a way to leave it and just have them do like exactly where to put their tripods and stuff, because it was a little close. It was for graduation.
I think that's a healthy balance when you know you can go toe to toe with somebody, but then you're just like, and you're not like worried about, did I hurt your feelings? Did I hurt your?
No, neither one of us were like,
we're good. We got this.
We're good. It's fine. Let's move on from it. And I think that's something really great. So, but just really consider, I mean, like we've said, if there's someone on your staff that you're constantly like, fuck me, why am I always course correcting you? Why is it not getting
cost
better?
You more energy in the long run. Yeah.
And course corrections are great. Like, they're needed. Like, you've course corrected me. I feel like I've course corrected you. Everybody's course corrected everybody on the team at this point, you know? But it's also, did they learn from it? If they learned and they grew from it, then great. It's progress. Like, ask every question you have. I don't give a shit if you're course corrected 100 times a day, as long as you're learning.
Right.
But if I feel like I'm constantly repeating the same thing and the same thing and the same thing and the same thing.
I have to say, though, just going back to the event this last week, and Garrett's always, he's a phenomenal speaker, and
no one does what Garrett does.
No one does what Garrett does. And I think myself, Ani, a lot of the trainers, we really leaned on Garrett in the past, and I was like, you guys, he has too much to stress about. He is going to burn my vision to the ground. So
and honestly, Garrett as a human was melting down.
I know.
Like, there would be days I would see him and I'm like, he's not going to make it.
No, he, like, literally, like, he was making decisions in my business and his business, and I was like, ooh, Mama's got to step back in. Like,
and Mama back.
Mama's back.
Is she back?
So I had to literally, like, come back in, and I was again the rudder, and I'm like, okay. And I feel like Garrett and I's relationship has been like that for the last 10 years. Like, I very much am like, I step back and I let him, I submit to my husband a lot. Like,
yeah. And let it be known, when she says it, it's not like she's some weird housewife spit shining his
no,
shoes. But as the masculine and the
I
feminine.
love seeing him. I love submitting to my husband. I have no issues with that. But there's always been a place in our relationship where I'm like, I gotta get up. I gotta push this ship forward. I gotta move this. I gotta get this going. Like, I can't always rely on him to like steer the ship. You know what I mean?
Well, and I feel because submitting, gosh, I love and hate that. Like not submitting, but I feel like the word itself sounds like submissive.
No.
But that's not what it is. It's when you look at it in terms of masculine and feminine.
Right.
As the masculine, yes, his role is to lead the family, take care of his children, lead as his wife,
but that
lead
doesn't
the
mean
future.
the feminine or the wife or the girlfriend or whatever can't step up and lead as well.
Absolutely. So there have been times where you've had to step into your masculine.
Right.
Because I feel he's very much like my boyfriend. He can go kind of feminine.
Yeah.
And then go
Very,
masculine.
very nurturing, like that
Yes,
side. Yes.
but the nurture side is actually feminine.
Yeah.
But then you and I have also had to be in a place where it's like, okay, feminine and sweet, how are you? That's just not going to get shit done.
Right.
So we easily step into like a masculine role. Do you know what I mean?
But I think even just like going back to, I just was so proud of like how my trainers and everybody, like it was literally like again, my husband is amazing, but I was like, this is the best event ever. And I brought him in as a guest speaker for 1 hour and he did phenomenal. And I was like, well, how did you feel about that? And he was like, that was awesome. I'm like, you loved it. And he's like, no, I did love it. I'm like, that's the only thing we really like, that we didn't need you for the entire event.
No, we needed you for 1 hour once a year, dude.
Yeah, I'm like, and you know what? You big money stylist and BMS, that was like you birthed that. You got this off the ground. And so I would love to have you come in for a speaker, but it was so cool because, and I said this in the event, I'm like, my husband was my mentor for the last 3 years. He showed me how to do an event. He showed me how to the modalities of training people. And I mixed that with the tool of natural beaded rose, and it was like game over. And now I feel like I don't just see, he said something interesting, and I don't know if you caught this when it was at the cocktail party after everything was over, and we're all sitting there in a group, and he goes, you know that you could have multiple BMS cons worldwide. And I was like, fuck me. Like, I had never thought because we just launched our small nationwide classes, and I was like super geeked about that. And I never thought about, because there's something like the nationwide classes are going to be amazing. They're 2 days on MBR, but nothing beats those events. Like
because the events themselves are 3 days long. It's a mix of natural beaded rose, which is the art, but then BMS, which is the business, marketing, and sales. But it's not like you're just sitting there like, please get out your journals. Step number 1 to build your business. It fucking wrecks you. And it throws your life upside down, and it has you questioning everything you've ever done in the most beautiful way that you could never imagine.
I have received so many like messages and emails and people that were just like, thank you. Like, I didn't even know I needed this. And like, you were the answer, like not you, but this was the answer to my prayers. I was like, oh my God. And like, when you hear stuff like that, you're like, wow, this is why we're doing what we're doing. You know what I mean? It's not just another hair technique, although this is an amazing tool and it's been proven to work over and over and over again. It's just like, it's literally like we're changing lives.
You know, it's so funny. This weekend, we were at a bar. My boyfriend was playing a show, and I was talking to a guy there who actually ended up, he was in Warrior and like does like Warrior things. And he was like, oh, you're the girl. Like, you're like the Warrior girl. I was like, yeah, that's me. And so we ended up talking, and he's like, you know, tell me more, like tell my girlfriend more about like what you do. So we ended up on this discussion, and I basically told him, you know, we do MBR, this and that. And I'm like, you know, it really just, it helps them increase their income, blah, blah, blah. And when I say that, people, they're always like, they kind of want to know, like, well, how much? And he had kind of asked that question. I'm like, well, on average, my girls make, you know, 15 to 20 a month. I'm like, but on the high end, they make about, you know, 80,000. And he's like, did you say 8,000? I said, no, 80,000, that's 5 digits. And he's like, wait, hairstylists can make $80,000 a month. I said, yeah, they can. And he looked at me. Look, had he been able to pass out on that fucking bar floor, I bet you he would have, because it is crazy. It is insane, and it sounds like we're honestly complete fucking liars.
I can't tell you how many times, even in like the beginning of my career when I didn't have a huge brand built, and I think I was bringing in about $20K a month. And I always tell people, I'm like, I'm a mom. I have 3 children. At the time I had 2 children, and I never wanted to work full time. I wanted to actually be a mom as well. So I did what I call 3-3-3. It's 3 clients, 3 days a week. It's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And it allowed me to have 4 days off to be with my family and kids and do the mom thing and all that. And I remember I told somebody, and I'm not going to throw this person under the bus, but they're my family. And I remember telling them I was making 20 grand a month, and they were like, hairdressers don't make 20 grand a month. And I was like, do you want my tax return? Do you want what do
I see my bank account? Because I can guarantee you they do.
And it was in that moment where I was like, holy shit, like I was just like, whatever. And I think that was a turning point for me in my career when I was like, I guess I've always thought of myself a hairdresser, but I always like felt like I was pretty like somewhat business savvy, and I just was like, this was like my standard. Like I when I first started doing hair, I was pulling in like 10 grand a month. And then when I started getting progressing in my year, in my career, I started pulling in 20 grand a month. So for me, I was kind of like, oh, people don't realize that this is possible. And that really was a turning point in my career, because I'm like, if I can figure out how to do this while still being a mom and still having family time and still like enjoying life, I want other people to experience this too. And that's when I launched it.
And so I just think that's been so great. And, going kind of back to the event, it's so crazy because I know like we talk about these numbers and we say like what our artists are making. And there are probably either other entrepreneurs out there, other business owners, especially other hairstylists that are like, that seems impossible. And jumping back to like Katie's role, how really not that it seemed impossible, but when we told her like, these are the things you're now responsible for, there was panic in her eyes. Like for her, I know it felt like there's no fucking way I can do this. I had talked to her many times where she was having complete breakdowns, being like, I don't actually think I can do this. Like, do you understand how hard this is? And I'm like, no one but me understands actually how hard this is. Yes, I of all people understand exactly where you're at. And even like I was having that moment because going into the event, I've been trained by Garrett. Like I've been to the Warrior events, I've been to the big conventions, like when it comes to training and modalities and how to speak and when to move and all those things, like it's been not like ingrained into my brain, but it was like I
didn't realize how closely you like mentored with Garrett, and like really like he was replacing himself with you.
He was. And do you know he actually told me that 2 years ago when he hired me. And I figured he had never told you way back then, but he was basically like, the goal is that you're the new me. And so that's why every single event, like, oh my.
You were the only person that was not hired by me. Did you know that?
Yeah. Oh, I knew.
I don't think I would have hired you. No offense.
I knew you would.
You were young. You had purple hair. I was just like,
I've always been more like a Garrett personality for sure. And I knew that like I came on the team when Danielle first met me. I had purple hair. I have so many tattoos. Like I'm not like the typical girl that worked at DKW who are like long hair and cute and like free people. I'm just more kind of like grunge and chucks and like more leather than lace, but inside of that, Garrett really spent the past 2 years with me, and every event was a fucking ass beating, down to like how I stood and the things that were said. Like it was constantly ingrained in my brain. And I've even sat with him before and I'm like, do you ever remember saying this thing to me? He's like, no.
He was your event mentor.
He absolutely was, and I realized like going into this week, I felt so much pressure. Like it was so much because I was like, oh my God, this is really, because last year he left me with the smaller classes, and he was basically like, fucking figure it out, like love you, bye.
Yeah.
And that was really the test of like, well, could I do it? And I did phenomenal. Like the numbers proved like I fucking did it, but never big scale.
Right.
Garrett was always the safety net. So with him being gone, I became the safety net.
You took on that pressure and that role.
All of it. And not just like safety net for myself. Because when you're the safety net, fun fact, you have no safety net. Like you fall on your fucking face. And I was well aware going into this. I'm like, if I stumble and I fuck up, I eat shit hard because there's no safety net for me anymore. I became the safety net for you and for the platform artists and for the trainers and for the students. And that pressure, and I only talk about this, because we're all under a lot of pressure, whether you own a business, whether you're a single income earner, whether you're the primary income earner. There's so much pressure that for a minute I was literally like, oh my God, I don't know if I can, like, I felt almost like I was starting to crack.
You know what I'll say is I remember this was probably 4 years ago, and it was right when Garrett started to do his Warrior Weeks. And at their Warrior Weeks, they do the big thing and then they sell them into like a coaching program. And I will never forget this. And Garrett looked at me and he had this look of worry in his eyes, and he said, wish me luck. I'm going to go do the offer. And I thought to myself, as you should never have to wish somebody luck. That means you didn't prepare and you're not ready.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, oh fuck, he's not confident in what he's offering them. And so this past year, I knew, like with my mastermind and everything that we were doing, I'm like, if you go into something overly prepared, like you will nail it. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And I felt like this last year, not only like there was a ton of planning, but like just the quarterlies and everything leading up to it. That's why I looked at you and I was like, we will have a 90% close rate. And you know what we got?
Very close to that.
I think it was like a 91% close rate. And it wasn't about closing, but I was like, I had told Jeremy, who was putting together videos and stuff for us, he was like, I was like, this isn't a sales pitch or a sales offer. This works. We have countless testimonials. We have numbers from artists. This is not my first fucking rodeo. We know how to do events.
Well,
We
not only
train
that,
staff.
we believe in what we're doing.
Right.
We know this isn't like well, I sure hope this program works for you.
No.
I know this
No,
program
we
works.
know. And so for me, I'm like, I told Jerry, I said, this is the next, I'm like, I'm not trying to be pitchy. I genuinely know that if they work, the tool will work.
100%.
And I'm like, so this is the next, the next transition into the program. Like, hey, this was amazing. Awesome. Now let's help you figure out how to use this tool and implement it into your business. Because we got you at BMS Con, we really opened your mind and broke down your barriers and your walls and everything. And you're ready. And almost everybody decided to join the academy, and it wasn't necessarily about the sale. It's because I know it works, and I know if they implement it, and I know if they do the work, they will have success. And it's not just like a little bit of success. Like women and stylists are doubling, tripling, quadrupling their income. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but you just changed the outcome trajectory for yourself, your family, your offspring. Like this just is a domino effect now.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I see that, I just get chills and I'm like, that's why we are fucking doing this. And that's why that's why it's working.
Well, and it's so funny because you and I had really looked at each other and we were just like, you ready? You're like, yep. You're like, you ready? I'm like, yep, we fucking got this.
Yeah.
Like, we got it. So, and just know, and kind of jumping back to the pressure of everything though, I know things can be stressful. I saw girl pressure this week, from basically everybody from the DKW staff who went and they were helping set everything up and tear everything down to the students who, do you know, I actually got a message from one of the girls who applied for the academy, and she was basically like, Ani, I applied and I put my deposit down. I have to take it back. My husband is pissed. He said that he doesn't believe in the results that have been seen and that I am not allowed to do it. And girl, if anybody knows me, you know how that is probably the most triggering thing in the entire world. When I have a woman say, my husband won't allow me, I'm like, you fucking asshole.
Is your husband working behind the chair or is it you?
Well, I'm
nope, don't do it.
I'm gonna just let that one go because that's a whole nother
Don't go there.
But even she was I could feel she was literally I'm so upset. I can't believe it. And she goes, he threatened to divorce me if I go through with it because he says it's a waste of money and it's just us going into debt. And I saw it and I didn't have a chance to respond because this weekend, I had to go MIA.
Yeah, me too.
This morning, I logged back in and I opened it up and then I had another message from her and she goes, disregard my previous message. I'm doing this shit. She's like, I'm fucking doing it. She's like, I don't care.
You know what though? You know what though? If they're in that spot in their relationship and he gives her that ultimatum, possibly it's not just about going forward. There's some other shit going on.
I highly doubt it's
relationship.
just about the academy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know what? I've had situations in my relationship, and I shared this at the big event, and I'll share it on a podcast. I don't care. But honestly, for me, when I started my brand, Garrett was like, yeah, you should start a brand. You should do this. And I was just like, whatever. And my husband and I were not in a good place. And I had 2 kids and my baby was second baby was 6 months old at the time. And I remember thinking okay, he's not making any money. I'm not making any money. He had emotionally had an affair with and made some really shitty decisions. And I can own up to the fact that our relationship wasn't great and I played a role in that as well. However, I just felt like it's such rock bottom. And I remember and I'm like, God, I stayed with my husband in that moment because even though I was making no money and he was making no money, I didn't believe in myself. Mm-hmm. And it was such a rock bottom for me. And I was like, so I started working on myself. I just was like, well, I don't know if I want to get a divorce, but I don't know if I can do this on my own. So I just started working on myself. And as I started to work on myself, my husband started to work on himself. And we both kind of played this back and forth game. And then we were able to kind of reconnect and rebuild our relationship. And it was amazing. But man, there were some dark times. And had I not chosen to take a left versus a right, I probably would have been divorced, probably been remarried, probably wouldn't have had my third baby that I just had, and none of this would have happened. And so
isn't it crazy to think, like, Danielle, had you not
if I would have said, you know what, this relationship's not working, let's get divorced, I would have got married to somebody else. I'm not going to lie, I probably would have got married to somebody who I felt like could financially support me, because women want that. I probably would have never had the drive to do what I did. And in that moment, I just was like, no, I'm going to work on me.
Well, because in that moment, that pressure that you were feeling, the pressure of having 2 kids, the pressure of having a shitty fucking husband, the pressure it becomes kind of like a do or die pressure.
Yeah.
And that, I feel, is what really refined you. And I hate to be like, pressure forms rocks to diamonds or whatever the fuck it is they say, but really
it can.
It can. And I feel like that's what it did for you. But also you had to be able to stand up and be strong enough to not crumble under the pressure.
Right.
Like, yeah, pressure can make diamonds or whatever that fucking saying is, but you also have to have some form of, not even really confidence, just some form of like, fuck it, I'm gonna do this.
I gotta do it, and I gotta do it for me.
There's no other option in it. And so that's something I really want people to remember as you're listening, because we're coming up to the end now, but to the end of the podcast today, but there's always going to be pressure in your life. There's always going to be moments where you're like, I don't actually know if I can do this.
Right.
Like I said, half the team had that shit just last week and we fucking crushed it. But it always comes down to really just a moment and a decision for yourself of being like, I am scared shitless. I am not confident. I'm not 100% I can do this. But you know what? Fuck it. I'm not just going to try. Like, I'm going to give this everything I have. And I know my mentality with everything is you know what? If I give it everything I have and at the end of the day it doesn't work, at least I can walk away and say, I gave it everything, every single piece of my being, my intellect, my energy, my time, my attention. I did everything I could. And guess what? It still didn't work. Hey, that just wasn't meant to be. Now let's course correct and keep going.
I think too, just to end like on that note, I think sometimes there's areas in our life where the ship is sinking and we think like, oh, I've just got to fight. I just got to fight. At some point, if your ship's like been sinking for quite some time, you need to reevaluate, like, why is that sinking, and face the facts and the truth. You know what I mean? Because I think we don't want to admit defeat. And it's not really defeat. It's just like acknowledging like this is not working and it's time to let it go in order to move forward. And if I were to leave one final thought with you guys, it's really, and I said this on a post, but you have to build yourself. Like, build you. The consequences for not building yourself is like a trifecta, and you won't know the impact that you actually have the power to make on people unless you're willing to take or look at yourself, the facts, and build you.
Yeah, and it's not just about when we say people. If you're not a trainer or are like in a training company, that doesn't matter, because if you have a business, then it's you, it's your partner, it's your family, it's the employees that you have, it's the product that you make, the clients that buy your product, all of your consumers. Like, there is an impact inside of every single thing that we do. There is always an impact that you have on someone, but the biggest person is yourself.
Right.
It's always yourself. So guys,
Woo! Yeah.
Biggest event of the year.
I literally feel like I grew up like 10 years this last week. Not 10 years, but like, when you like have this feeling, you're like, I just got a little more adult this week.
And you know what? I feel like I think back to the week before the event and I'm like, well, that person died and I'm a new person.
Right?
That's literally how I feel.
No, like you just feel like you're stronger.
I feel like, motherfucker, I am solid. I'm so solid.
Bring it on.
That's literally, I'm so glad you said, because I've been feeling that this week. I'm like, I look back after, and sorry, I know we're ending, but I look back from event to event to event. I think of who I was 2 years ago and I was like, oh my gosh, you were a little kid who fucking moved here alone. How did anybody let you move across the country? Then I think back to the first BMS intensives I did by myself and I'm like, man, you were really nervous. Then I think of taking all of that content that I used to have Garrett for, all of the content I used to have Garrett's videos for, and I'm like, you just trained that to 300 motherfucking people.
You showed up like a beast this week. Like,
Thank you.
I'm just going to say this last thing. I know we keep trying to come to an end. I remember I showed up the first day of training, and I think you had your glasses on, and you had your short haircut, and I was like, motherfucking CEO showed up. And I was just like, it's like I saw you in a new light, and I was like, we're taking over.
Oh, I showed up to fucking throw down.
It wasn't even like throw, like you just...
I came.
You just like look so like this was your role. I was like, it was fun to like sit back and watch you, to watch all the trainers. Like, I was just like, we're solid.
I came with my business pants on.
We came with
literally.
our business everything on.
It really was. So they're my red pants. I know exactly what you're saying.
I was like, you look serious. I like it.
I was serious. So guys, thank you for joining us and all of our excitement. And just remember, there will always be pressure. You just have to push past it. So
And I promise I'll blow dry my hair next time.
probably won't. So you can watch us at bigmoneystylistnow.com or listen to us on, iTunes, Spotify, everywhere else. And we'll be here next week. Oh, and we're coming close to our 100th episode.
And we have tons more education coming out this year. So if you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you're like, BMS Con scares me, we now have nationwide classes available. And
There's only a couple spots left for January or February. We already sold out like
shit.
6 classes.
Okay, so we'll be
7, 8.
releasing, once we sell out the classes, we keep releasing more like 2-3 months at a time. So last year our education was locked down. BMS was the only chance you had to get into our education. And this year we're doing small intensive. So if that small little voice is telling you and you've been listening to the podcast for a while, do it and do it scared.
And thanks for listening to Big Money Sales Podcast. Bye.